Sometimes the best way to understand a whole empire isn't by reading some huge history book, but by looking through the eyes of just one person. Today, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're following the incredible journey of a 17th century diamond merchant whose personal accounts gave Europe its first real peek into the unbelievable wealth of Mughal India.
And that's really the big question here, isn't it? How did one merchant, a guy focused on making a profit from precious gems, end up creating one of the most valuable historical records of a legendary empire? Well, let's follow his footsteps and find out. All right, so our story kicks off with the man himself. He's a French explorer, but his reasons for going east were a little different from the soldiers or missionaries of his day. Meet Jean-Baptiste Tavernier. Now, this guy wasn't just a tourist. He was a serious businessman, and his expertise in gems, well, that was his golden ticket. It got him into circles of wealth and power that most outsiders could only dream of. It gave him this absolutely unique perspective on the economy and the sheer luxury of the Mughal court. But what makes a young guy from Paris decide to cross the entire world, not just once, but over and over again? Well, the answer really lies in his upbringing, and of course, the powerful pull of the East. You really have to look at his family to get it. He literally grew up surrounded by maps and people talking about global trade. It's like adventure was in his blood. This didn't just make him curious. It gave him the know-how and the connections to actually go out and do it. And where was he headed? Oh, the destination was clear: India. See, back in 17th century Europe, stuff like this, spices, silks, gemstones, these weren't just nice products. They were symbols of incredible wealth. For a merchant like Tavernier, India was the jackpot. It was the source. So just how committed was he to this quest for fortune? Well, this number, it says everything. 6. He didn't just go to Asia once. He made 6 separate, incredibly long and super dangerous journeys. This wasn't a trip. This was his entire life's work. And just look at this timeline. It really puts that commitment into perspective. We're talking about almost 40 years of travel. It spans a huge chunk of the 17th century. He basically dedicated his entire adult life to this. So where did these incredible journeys lead him? Well, Tavernier's travels took him right into the heart of the mighty Mughal Empire, which, at the time, was one of the wealthiest and most sophisticated civilizations on the planet. And he wasn't just wandering around, he went straight to the centers of power and money. Surat was this buzzing gateway for global trade, a real melting pot of merchants. And Agra and Delhi, those were the imperial capitals, the nerve centers of all that Mughal power and splendor. And because his career was so long, he actually saw the reigns of 2 legendary emperors. He was there for the court of Shah Jahan, the guy who built the Taj Mahal, and later the powerful, sprawling court of his son, Aurangzeb. This gives you just a little taste of what he saw. Now, remember, this is a gem expert talking. So when he says the wealth was enormous, you can bet it was on a scale that was just unimaginable to most people back in Europe. He was completely blown away by the opulence. Before gem merchant, the ultimate prize wasn't just seeing the jewels at court. It was going to the source. And that leads us to the most famous part of his travels, his visit to the legendary Golconda mines. You have to get this. Golconda wasn't just a source of diamonds. For a while, it was the source. For centuries, this one little region in India supplied the entire world with its most incredible gems. For a guy like Tavernier, this was like reaching the summit of Mount Everest. So many of history's most iconic diamonds were pulled from the ground right here. But one in particular, its story just echoes through the centuries. Any guesses which one he might have laid eyes on? Yep, that's the one, the Koh-i-Noor, one of the most famous and frankly controversial diamonds in history. Tavernier's writings are some of our earliest European records of the massive gems being traded in this region, and that connects his story directly to this legendary stone. So after decades of travel, Tavernier finally heads back to Europe for good. But his journey wasn't really over. You could say the final and maybe most important part was just beginning, sharing everything he had seen. He took all of his detailed notes and observations and compiled them into this book, The 6 Voyages. And this wasn't just a travel diary, okay? It was a detailed report on the economy, the culture, and the mind-boggling wealth of a world that was a total mystery to his readers. The book became an absolute sensation. And here's why it was such a big deal. It wasn't just adventure stories, it was basically data. He mapped out trade routes, he explained how the diamond industry actually worked, and he gave these incredible first-hand accounts of the court's staggering luxury. For 17th century Europe, this wasn't just a book, it was priceless economic and political intelligence.
So in the end, that's what Tavernier really was. He was a bridge. He took his own experiences and turned them into a story that shaped how Europe saw India for generations. He took it from a land of myth and made it a very real place of immense wealth and power. And this really leaves us with a final thought. Tavernier's stories shaped an entire continent's view of another. Today, we're bombarded with information from everywhere, all the time. It makes you stop and think, who are the Taverniers of our time? And what new worlds are their stories revealing to us right now?